Hey everybody, Merry Christmas and welcome to the Horror Slash, where we're going to review some films. Obviously, today would be a great time to start off with some holiday films. Alright, so on today's show, we're going to do 3 films with the same name. Black Christmas 1974, Black Christmas 2006, and Black Christmas 2000. Let's get festive. All right, in 1974, Bob Clark, yes, the director who brought us probably the greatest Christmas movie ever made, A Christmas Story, brought us a dark, campy, edgy slasher before there were slashers, Black Christmas. Written by Roy Moore, and while the film isn't exactly a screenplay masterpiece, it's hard to imagine how influential this format would be in years to come. All right, so the film centers around a bunch of sorority girls stuck in their house over the Christmas holidays, snowstorms, and all the awesome settings that go along with it. And while they're there, they're subjected to some obscene phone calls. And now when I'm saying obscene, I'm talking like firecrackers right to the woodshed, obscene phone calls. Considering this film was made in 1974, I'll go light on spoilers, but at the same time, come on, you had time. One by one, the girls start dropping off until there is only one left. And unlike a lot of horror films, the closure in this film does not come. In fact, it's actually just as eerie as the climax, which is kind of cool and very, very 1970s cinema style, which is never going to be frowned upon on this show. All right, so story. It's solid. I mean, it was kind of like the first slasher film, so for that, you got to give it a lot of love. But it did kind of drag at certain times. I feel like about 10 minutes of this film could have been probably cut, and it would have helped it move along. But again, 70s pace. And it's hard to believe now, but this film was extremely relatable. Obscene phone calls, I mean, this is back when, people answered their phones. All right, so the setup of this film is perfect, really. I mean, it sets the tone. It gives you the sorority house, the snow, the wind blowing, an early kill for that ominous, uncomfortable feeling. The characters get introduced. For setup, it did the horror, again, it did the horror slasher setup probably for the first time. All right, characters. This was okay. I'd say out of the 10 or so main characters, I gave a crap about 3 of them. Olivia Hussey, the main star-ish, kind of. John Saxon, who played Lieutenant Fuller. And of course, Margot Kidder, who was freaking Lois Lane. So, Also worth noting is SCTV alum Andrea Martin is in this film. Funny enough, seeing her first on Second City and then seeing this film is weird. All right, so for sexiness, for a sorority film, it really wasn't all that sexy. And, I guess the one moment of sexiness that I can think of is if you close your eyes when Margot Kidder is getting killed, it kind of sounds like she's getting banged. But other than that, for a sorority film, it was Christmas time and you kind of felt that when you were watching this film, but at the same time, there was not one point where you could kind of let your guard down and feel comfortable. And that was obviously intentional and very, very well played out. Bob Clark nails the tone and pace of this film. I did mention I thought it was a little long and maybe a little slow at times, but at the same time, everything seemed to be building. And that's what you want when you're watching these films. In fact, this film is scarier, 1974, than most films today in the way it's delivered and packaged. And that has a lot to do with Bob Clark's direction. In fact, I would say this film holds up in the scare category probably better than some of the classics like even Halloween. All right, so overall, I give Black Christmas a lot of credit for maybe not starting instantly the slasher craze, but definitely laying down the foundation where years later, many, many would follow. It's creepy, it's fun, it's dark, it holds up. I give it a B. So 32 years later, someone is sitting in their office and saying, Black Christmas needs a remake. And lo and behold, Black Christmas 2006 was born. Now, this film takes it on the chin an awful lot. And there's definitely some points to be made for that. However, I think this film gets a bum rap and there's a lot of redeeming qualities in it. So let's get down to Black Christmas 2006. Roy Moore gets a writing credit on this, but ultimately this was written and directed by Glenn Morgan. And Black Christmas 2006 was a bomb. And you need look no further than the DVD featurettes where Glenn is basically writing off his entire career with extreme sad puppy dog eyes. It was uncomfortable. And I feel unwarranted. Well, kind of. I mean, again, this was not a perfect film. In this all-out slasher remake, the killer, Billy, is way more established. Not only is he a maniac on the loose, but we find out his sad backstory, which, in fairness, really still didn't make me sympathize with him, but it was still kind of cool. All right, so Billy was born with jaundice, and he was pretty much disowned by his mom and father. Well, the father loved him. The father was actually really, really nice to him, but for some reason, the mother had this stranglehold over the father's balls. In the end, Billy's father was brutally murdered by the mother's boyfriend, which weird dynamic in that house. And Billy saw it all and really messed him up beyond. So now Billy had no one to care for him. Well, it gets weirder. So the mother, who had, a great active, sexual appetite, decided to have sex with her boyfriend, who was unfortunately passed out drunk. What to do, you ask? Well, she did not flinch for more than half a second before she remembered she has a son locked up in the attic, who is now old enough for this to be really creepy, but not illegal. Well, no, it is incest. Incest is legal, right? I guess it depends where you live. But anyways, it's wrong. So the mom decides to bang Billy, her son. And funny enough, this was the oh crap moment in the theater where people sighed and groaned. It had a good effect. It was messed up and it shocked people. So how can this get weirder, you ask? So now she has a baby, which is Billy's daughter and sister. I mean, a few of us have probably been there, right? Billy attempts to kill his sister by ripping out her eye. Unfortunately, well, I guess if you're cheering for Billy, he was disrupted, and his mom and boyfriend tried to stop him. Well, Billy kills them, kills the boyfriend, and then takes revengeance on his mom. But he does not decide to kill and run and make his quick getaway. Billy decides to make Christmas cookies out of his mother's skin and bakes them and eats them. In fairness, if you watch the scene, I think it could have baked a little bit longer. And downs it with a nice wholesome glass of milk. So that's the backstory of Billy. And at this point, if you haven't seen the film, you probably understand why, even with the backstory, I don't really sympathize with him that much. But he was raped by his mom, so I guess I've never experienced that, so sympathy. So back to the sorority house we go, where the legend of Billy is famous within the sorority because guess what? They have set up their sorority house in Billy's old house. So, like the first one, the formula of a slasher film, the girls start getting knocked off one by one in seemingly kind of unrealistic fashion, unless there happens to be two killers. And spoiler report, there is two killers. That's right, Billy and his sister, daughter, Agnes. All right, story. It is what it is. I dug it. I thought it was kind of cool having the backstory in there. I really felt that this film was strong for a good hour. Unfortunately, it's about an hour and 35 minutes. So, Act 3 really needed a couple of rewrites. The setup for this film, again, was done pretty well. It starts off with Billy in an insane asylum, and it's a really grim, dark setting. But again, mixed with a little bit of a Christmas feel that was kind of off-putting and cool and comforting. No, not quite, not quite. But anyways, had a good setup, and the characters were introduced kind of a little bit in a cheesy cliche way. Um, the girls, I mean, but at the same time, it worked. For the type of film it was, it worked. Characters. Weak here. While Billy and Agnes kind of got a little bit more developed, this was just, cheesy cliche characters that for some reason all had such angst that they hated each other's company, and you really didn't care too much for them when they died off, with the exception of a few. Cheesy conversations, that kind of stuff. There was time and space for some of these characters to be better evolved, and you wanted to like them, as we'll get into the cast in the next category, but it just never happened. What makes the characters a little bit more of a shame was this film had a really, really good cast. And what I would normally kind of slide into the sexy category, they definitely have that. But they were, at the time, there was some hot names in this film. Katie Cassidy, Lacey Chabert, Michelle Trachtenberg, and Mary Elizabeth Winstead. Is kind of like a catch-22. Yes, okay, you wish that it was a little bit better because of this, but they weren't all going to have a vehicle from this film. But at the same time, it even makes it more enjoyable to go back and watch this film because you do have capable talent. I love the setting of this film, and I think this is one of the reasons why I have to watch it every Christmas time, because along with it being kind of an off-putting, creepy horror film, it's got really, really good production value. It has an awesome snowstorm, which you always want in a horror winter film. It's got awesome lighting, Christmas. The deck in this is really, really top notch. It's got like an 80s kind of feel to it. There's very few shots in this film where it doesn't come across that you're watching a Christmas horror film. And that is awesome. For me, this is the film's biggest strength. All right, direction. I don't think Morgan did a bad job with this film. Okay, I would say probably the last 20 minutes needs a lot of work. And at the end of the day, that is what frames your audience's point of view on your film. But it wasn't that bad. And like I said, this film gets ripped apart. And it's not always easy to make a low budget horror film. Other misses in this film, I felt where, okay, fine, you have a killer who has jaundice, but he really, the jaundice was extreme, I guess you could say. He looked like the yellow man in Return of the Living Dead, and he kind of played out that funny too, because I don't think he was cast very well. Unfortunately, there was just a very, very plain Jane look to him. He looked like a pouty child that didn't get his way, which maybe that was the creative direction. But if it wasn't, it really kind of came across as laughable at times. Agnes, however, who was played by a man, and it really, really was an interesting and I think clever move by Morgan, looked amazing and looked menacing and definitely off-putting. And that is what you want. You want to creep people out, you cast a man as a woman. It'll do it. This film got destroyed when it came out. And I'm not talking about critics, 'cause critics in horror films, I mean, what's the point? I mean, I'm critiquing things, and who the hell am I? But it also got destroyed by people who went to see it. And I remember leaving the theater thinking it was pretty good. It gave me some things that I can revisit, and I have revisited many times over the Christmas holidays in the years to come. What I like is slowly through social media, you're starting to see a little bit of a turnaround with the acceptance of this film. It's not coming full circle. Like, we're not talking that this film is going to be received as well as Texas Chainsaw Massacre or The Omen or something like that. It's not going to come that far around. However, it is coming to a place where I believe it belongs, and that is an acceptable slasher horror film. And maybe perspective is sometimes what's needed. But regardless, I enjoy this film quite a bit. Sometimes I enjoy watching it more than the original. Is it better? No, I give it a C. We got Christmas gifts here to open up, so I'm going to remember to do this after, at the end of the show, because it wouldn't be a Christmas show without a Christmas gift. All right. The next film we're going to talk about is different. So the structure of this show will probably be evolving, but the first two films is kind of the idea. I'm going to go a little bit off script right now. Not that I have a script, but this is going to be a different kind of review. I'm not going to show this film in any way. And I am not really going to follow the format of going through the characters and cast and all that kind of stuff. Although I will be kind of breaching off into different realms of this production. My opening comment with Black Christmas 2019 is that it is, and no matter how long I do this show for, whether it's a week or 10 years, unless something comes out after this, and it could very well happen, Black Christmas 2019 is the worst film I have ever seen in my life. And I'm not saying that to make a point. I'm not saying that for any other reason but to be completely open and honest and accurate with my opinion of this film. So let's talk Black Christmas 2019. So I saw this film on opening night in a theater with about 12 people. Have you ever been beaten senseless with a point of view and then completely conformed to it? No, it doesn't happen like that. And that is exactly what the attempt was with this film. This was insulting in so many ways. This was an attempt by the filmmakers to completely burst their verbal diarrhea all over people on the thoughts that have rung through their heads over the years. Well, this is art, okay? Film is art. It's not monologues. It's not standing up on a soapbox and saying your point of view. You want to get your point of view across? That's fine. Do it with art. Filmmaking is an art. You have the chance. You as a filmmaker, you as a writer, you as a production company have the chance to make a point of view. Use it wisely. Hire the right people. Get the right people involved with a project. And then your point comes across. You don't just slap people around and then when they don't accept it, say, well, they're obviously against women. Because that isn't the case at all. I'm going to start with dialogue just because randomly, what the hell. So the dialogue is probably the worst I've ever seen in a film. Just flat out. There's just absolutely, it's the Expositional dialogue in this film is inexcusable. Even if you were an unintelligible slab of beef, I think you would be able to pick up what this film is trying to say without character dialogue shoving it down your throat. It was just, oh God, it was so bad. I don't even have the proper words for it. And it's kind of ironic because I'm talking about dialogue. All right, along with the expositional dialogue of this film, there was absolutely no reason to get through this film unless you really just had absolutely nothing to do or were bedridden. It was that bad. But while I go on and on about how poorly written this was, at the end of the day, it's Blumhouse that really, really is the culprit in this absolute train wreck of a film. As far as filmmaking goes, I'm not even going to really delve into that. But that was weak too. I'd like to say, well, okay, all the other surrounding hoopla was one thing, but the filmmaking was, but it wasn't. It just seemed very sloppy, handheld, compositionally challenged. The understanding is that this was a rushed production. And if that's the case, then, we'll give the director some slack on that. But, you're putting out a product, whether it's the producer, whether it's director, whatever it is, it can't be this poor quality. I cannot believe Cary Elwes did this film. It is absolutely heartbreaking to see him in this film. All right, so and also, do we want to even discuss that this film is not scary at all? Like, not in the least? Like, zero scares. I mean, part of the reason was because they were trying to shoehorn a feminist movement into every single scene rather than concentrating on what this film is about. It was like director Sophia Takal's mise en scène for every scene was, what sucks about men? Every character in this film is hateable. Every single one. And sometimes it takes you a little longer to find out that they're hateable. But the more the film kind of headed towards the finish line, they all sucked. But then some characters, like the character of Chris, was hateable in less than 60 seconds. Now, I'm not exaggerating. That's hard to do. That's really, really hard to do. So if this film did anything that was impressive, I guess you could say that was. The climax of this film was ambitious, I guess, in thought process and completely nonsensical, where there was this massive slow motion, live action battle between all the evil men and all the great women. And in the end, all the great women destroy the men, literally destroy them. They kill everybody. And there was just, it seemed, and I don't know if this was just me, because I don't dare watch this film ever again, but it just seemed like there was a hell of a lot of bow and arrows in this film. And especially in that last sequence, it just felt like every time someone kind of looked to the side of the screen, they ended up pulling out a bow and arrow, which was weird. Earlier in the show, I mentioned, how could this be greenlit? And let's look to Blumhouse for this. I personally believe that they couldn't have seen this as, from an objective point of view, as a good horror film. What they did was cash in on an amazing Christmas name, Black Christmas, which carries a lot of tradition with it, and saw the political issues of the day at the time and wanted to get in front of it as, Blumhouse is progressive and for women and really, I believe that Blumhouse wanted this to be a social statement that was reflective of their production company, and that they're so sympathetic and understanding of the situations that are out there, and here's this film. That's what I think. And that is gross and disgusting because you have a horror fan base that you've insulted. Look, it felt like the filmmakers stood on a soapbox and started preaching to everybody. And at the end of the day, I'm kind of standing on my soapbox and preaching back. I give this film an F minus. I don't think that'll ever happen. Well, it won't ever happen again. But remember, I did say this is my least favorite film of all time. Subscribe now. Follow me on social media. And we'll see you soon. Stay safe. Stay scary. Happy holidays. And oh, wait, I forgot. I have a gift open. And it's an empty box. And you know why? Because this was given to me by 2020. Go figure. Happy holidays.